everybody. This is Justin Case of American Newscape, rejoining our friend, cousin Scott Dudley for American Consciousness, and Scott is working on his posture. So when you get a chance, comment on that. Hello, Scott. Welcome back to American Newscape.
Yeah, I did 20 years of radio, but I never had a camera feedback. I really honestly believe if I'd gone on the Howard Stern show for any length of time, I'd have ended up in some psychiatric hospital with like too much thoughts in my head.
No, Scott, you'd have been fine. I think your perspective for them may have been more than they could have handled. All of them.
I don't know. That was the original intake of the radio show, and fortunately, I got out before they figured out how to use the cameras.
Okay. Okay. Well, hey, Scott, let's get after this thing. Are you ready for this? We're talking about enough and perspectives in enough. So why don't you take it away?
Yeah, yeah. This popped up a couple of weeks ago in the dog park, and so we had kind of a couple of weeks to play around with it. And it's there are so many choices in our lives. There are so many ways to do things. There's so many different areas we can focus on, behave in, just be. And that's everything from eating potato chips to running marathons to dating people. Anything you look at can be quantified. And the conversation came up that basically we don't have any governors. So nobody's kind of standing over our shoulders saying, that's your fourth bag of chips today. Isn't that a little bit too much? And so we started talking about having to internalize our awareness, and then our kind of like, what's the line? Where's the limit? How much is too much? When is it enough? And when is it more than enough?
Well, absolutely. And as we age, those criteria change for us.
Very much so. When I was 24, that fifth Long Island iced tea was probably enough. Although it took me a couple sixes and sevens to figure out that five was probably enough.
I was kind of blessed because I learned, in my late teens that I could walk away from things. And lots of times walking away from things is very healthy for us.
Sometimes it gets some raised eyebrows though, right? Because people will like, why are you walking away from this?
Well, it can be dramatic because when I quit drinking socially, it's not that I gave up alcohol and it wasn't a chemical dependency thing, but when I recognized that I was drinking too much in my mind, I just decided to walk away from it. And in business, I had to change all my clients because they did not trust me anymore because I would not go out and drink with them and or drink with them at lunch.
It was part of the culture.
Yeah, and it was part of the culture I had built. It was part of my circle. And I elected to get new clients. And I did.
So you were the gregarious drinking buddy. Let's go to lunch and tip a few back guy.
Well, I was, and I say probably in my early 20s, I realized that I wasn't getting much done in the afternoon. I
Yeah, yeah,
thought,
yeah. I was gonna say that would lead me to a nap pretty quickly.
yeah. So, but that was a good decision for me, and it wasn't. I didn't know how I was going to navigate it, but it proved not to be daunting at all.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it does change with age, as you pointed out. I mean, just saying Five Island like iced teas uh, makes my liver start to kind of threaten me. It's like looking up at me, going, "What?" Not on my watch.
Yeah, well, and we change our circles and we build out things, but there's lots of things, and I was always blessed with being able to walk away from athletics, from whatever. There was a time, there was a trigger in my mind that went off and said, "That's enough. You don't have to do this anymore."
And I think that's really the key today is it's a lot easier to walk away from something if you tell yourself, this is enough.
Yeah,
I'm done.
absolutely. And we're not talking about people with chemical dependencies, but once you move on, even relationships, food groups, whatever it is, you learn that it's easier the next time you need to make that decision for yourself.
Okay, quitting stuff is really good practice for quitting other stuff. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right about that. And it might not be quitting forever. Like with the Long Island iced tea example, it might just be that session. It's like, I don't need another one now. I've had enough today. And then you can come back and circle back to it and make other choices further down the road.
It's like even at this prehistoric age, I'm asked at a party, you don't want to have a drink, and it's almost like they're confused. And I said, "Oh no, I don't have to do that anymore. I used to do that really good."
I I used to my coping, right. You have to tell them something, and what I would tell them was, well, I fell into the vat when I was really really young, and I was so saturated that any more might be potentially toxic, and so I kind of had to call it a day there.
Well, give us some more examples. So give us some reflections from the dog park.
All right, phones, social media.
Mhm.
That was for the younger people in the dog park. That was one they instantly gravitated for because they kind of know it's their inner self is talking to them. Because if you spend too much time on the phone, you're not going to get pulled over for DUI. You might get distracted driving if you're on your phone that much. But ultimately, the consequences are not immediate. They don't slap you up hard enough to get you to stop. And your phone's your best friend. Every notification is a potentially game-changing thing that you must catch right in the moment, or you might miss out. And that is, I was talking about this with younger people, and they are acutely aware that this is something that every 3 or 4 years, because it's accelerating so quickly. The changes on the internet, the changes with how the internet relates to people and what it makes us do is so rapid and so engulfing and so different that a 5-year-old today on the internet is generationally different than a 5-year-old 5 years ago. And so they're going to have a whole different perspective. They're going to have a whole different area of potential trauma. And their parents aren't going to be able to sort it out because their parents, the wave already broke. We're out in the middle of the ocean watching the waves break. But these kids are on the wave. They're riding the wave. And so their immediacy, their future, what they have to deal with is right there. So one of the things we could ask ourselves, and this is not just a young person thing, is how much electronics is enough? How much social media? And we've touched upon this a little bit in other shows, which you're free to and encouraged actually to go back and listen to. But the reality is that is a big component of many people's lives now. And each person, each individual is going to have a different limit. And so sorting out when is enough. And so for me, social media. And I had a friend tell me the other day, you must spend a lot of time on social media. And I said, no, I'm just really quick at processing stuff. It's like, I see it, I copy it, I paste it, I send it, I write it, whatever I'm doing, I do fairly quickly because I don't like being on my phone. And my dogs and cats don't like if I'm on my phone. And my wife doesn't like if I'm on my phone. I get all sorts of negative feedback from the people in my, the beings in my life. Why do you have that in your hand? So, quick little morning constitutional. Okay, I'm on my phone. We used to have I don't know if you were part of this generation, but we used to have a little hardcover book. It was called Poems for the John, and it would be it actually had a hole in the book so you could put it on a cord and put it right and attach to your toilet paper.
Wow.
And so you'd walk in there and you'd open up the book, and it had cute little. It's kind of like a Reader's Digest meets Johnny Carson kind of funny cultural thing. And our phones have turned into that. So I've got that moment. And a little bit after, if I'm running early, but essentially once my morning gets going, the phone gets put down. I got another little moment like after everything's done in the morning, before lunch. And it's usually about 20 minutes, not very long. And then maybe another half hour or so in the afternoons when the dog wants to go outside and I supervise the dog. So I sit outside with the dog to make sure that the dog's not misbehaving. And which is good for me. It's fresh air and good for the dog, keeps her out of trouble. And I can just sit there on my phone. But that's less than 2 hours a day.
Well, I mean, people may be surprised, even though I use social media professionally. I don't have any of the apps on my phone. I use the phone to text and to call people, and that's about it. But I spend time on social media more than I want for professional purposes, and I don't want to say let's just say I despise it because I don't like to use the word hate. But hasn't there always been something? Didn't our parents tell us if we sat too close to the TV, we would go blind? I mean,
when I went blind in my career watching computers all day. I had really good eyesight, and now it doesn't work up close. Now I have to.
well, I had issues too, but I started taking an eye supplement, and it seemed to solve them. And you helped me. You told me to get rid of the blue light on my phone or something. You told me to do something.
Yeah.
But there's people that are dependent on it. There's people that their social lives that's all they have. And maybe for some of them it's a blessing, but it saddens me to think that they don't have the inspiration to develop a real social life.
Yeah, it occurs to me that if that's your only venue for human connection, it's not really human connection because it's mitigated by the device. The device is between you and the other person. It's just not the same. Your phone's not spitting out pheromones at you. All of the little subtle things that we have. I once my son is involved in. He was an Apple guy, and so he was really cutting edge, trying to develop the best stuff. And I once told him, I said, you know what? Virtual reality is not virtual reality because I can't smell a thing. And if you can't give me scent, if you can't give me all of my senses touch, then it's not reality. And I think it's important to remember that.
Well, yeah, Scott, but it's only a matter of time because remember the day Scratch and Sniff showed up in your magazine.
So true story. Broadway, my aunt took me to a Broadway show. It was Fiddler on the Roof, and we had pretty good seats. And in the program was a Scratch and Sniff martini.
There you go.
And I lived in that program the whole show. I was like, because I'd never experienced anything like that, and certainly never smelled gin. And so it was pretty fascinating.
Well, did you wish you were a rich man or not? Was that a different time?
That was a pretty cool show, and I eventually caught up. I eventually paid more attention when I grew up. I think I was like 7 years old, so it's not like its themes were like bouncing into me or whatever. I was just listening to the songs and kind of bopping along or whatever. So yeah, good stuff, and being on Broadway, I can count that off my bucket list of stuff, right? I don't have to go back and try and do that on my credit card. So it worked out okay. But I think for people with social media, back to the point, I think we have to really challenge ourselves to say how much is too much, when is enough, because the phone itself, and this isn't just social media, it's texting, it's everything, um, isn't going to put the brakes on. You know, I liked it when I was on much more because of work. I would get the weekly notifications. You spent this much time on this phone per day. And now I get the health notification. Now I get the, like, you've taken more steps this week. So I've kind of turned it around now.
Well, I do still get the notification that I spent so many hours on the phone during the week, and if I could figure out how to turn off that notification, I would.
Stop nagging me.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but
I
yeah,
wasn't really on the I wasn't really on the phone. The phone was on, but I wasn't on it. I was doing something else.
exactly. So what else did we get from the dog park?
All right. The Another one that we got from the dog park was interestingly was credit.
Okay.
How much is enough credit? Is for some people that may be zero, right?
Right.
And for some people that may, I but so let's lived history. Nobody ever really schooled me on this stuff, and I grew up pretty poor, and so I did a lifetime of this. Whoops, hang on, I'm going to go the right direction. I did it like a roller coaster ride, up and down and up and down and up and down through my adult years, until I finally figured out what was right for me in terms of credit, and that was having a single credit card with a really high limit and paying everything on that credit card every month, and then paying the credit card off every month. And that for me turned out to be the right call. So I can kind of moderate my spending. I know within a reasonable amount how much I'm spending, but I'm not being an accountant about it, because that's not me. But I found my sweet spot where all of a sudden I'm not like stuck in minimum payment land, or we were talking, and some people spend a significant amount of time finding those zero interest bargains for 6 months and jumping around like serial daters, from one credit card to another, trying to keep that low interest rate. And guess what? If I pay off my credit card every month, I don't pay any interest, and I get cash back rewards. So to me, it's a win-win. And I finally figured it out, and it took me a good while and a couple of really bumpy adventures, but I'm there.
Well, let's change your vernacular a little bit, Scott. Let's not say serial daters. Let's say accomplished daters.
Well, it is a skill, but it takes time.
True, 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 true. So credit is good, and what else did you get from them? I'm sure they had a lot of suggestions.
All right. Well, food is a huge one.
Hmm.
And so, how much is enough food? And again, back to my about 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the people that I hang out with are really honestly trying to moderate their weight. They have various attack strategies. Some of them are like trying to get physically active. Others are trying to modify what they eat. But we are the United States is huge, and it's a double whammy. We've got more access to more foods that are lower quality nutrition than anywhere else in the world. And so it's like the perfect storm. George Clooney's boat's tipping over somewhere, going, "Oh yeah, this is really bad." And so we have super high rates of obesity. And I come from a genetic stock of big people. I saw a picture. My grandmother showed me a picture once of her grandparents, and there were these four Norwegians, three guys and a lady, and they were on a farm scale, and they were all like 6'6" for starters, but the farm scale was tipping like 1,250 pounds. And so these guys weren't obese because bad food hadn't caught up to America yet. Capitalism hadn't grabbed the hamburger and put a bunch of sugar and salt in it and said, "Here, now it tastes really good, and I'll give it to you for 90 cents."
Yeah, right. Well, and they were proud of their weight, and at that time they needed to be.
They needed it for their farmers. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. So, well, yeah, food management and enough is enough is certainly an aspect of it. And there again, with as we evolve, when I was an athlete, required 7,000 calories a day. Now it's 1,500 calories.
Do you count calories? Is that part of your strategy, or?
I try to. I have enough background in nutrition and things like that that it's easy for me. So I do assessments in the day. I eat breakfast, put that number in my head, then eat lunch and put that number in my head, and I will adjust dinner to where I fall between 1,500 and 2,000 calories, but I try and keep it to the 1,500 calories, and I do better with it.
If I did 3 meals a day, I'd be like at the end of I'd push back from the breakfast table going, okay, well, I'm a little over now.
But see,
2,500 calorie French toast and everything else breakfast.
Yeah, but and when I tell people 7,000 calories, they have trouble believing it till they hear it. But when you're on that type of diet, I promise you, you do not enjoy eating. It's like a job.
No, you're being forced to eat. I've heard that from athletes who had to grow in there, like offensive linemen in college who had to grow into the position, or a really skinny 6'8" guy who's trying to play basketball, and just get pushed away because they're so skinny, and so they're trying to put on 40, 50 pounds, and it's really work, because ultimately you're being guided by your metabolism and your genetics.
Absolutely.
And those are not generalized. Those are very individualized.
Well,
and they don't stay constant. Do you want your 23-year-old metabolism back just for those big meal days?
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't. It was work. It was work. And there again, in my upbringing, food was a social event, so it wasn't the food that was important as the socializing.
Oh yeah. There's all these family rules. If somebody offers you food, in Spanish they call it despreciando la comida. You can't reject food because historically food was necessary for survival. There wasn't this mad abundance of stuff that America we throw away right now. Like 40% of the food in the grocery stores and restaurants goes into the dumpster. There wasn't this abundance, and so if somebody offered you food, they were offering it out of their own stomachs. Basically, it was like, here, I'm going to eat a little bit less today because I love you. And so there were really strong cultural boundaries in almost every culture that said, if somebody gives you food, you eat the food. Well, that's not a winning strategy in a land of empty calories, at least not for me.
Well,
my Waterloo, to be honest, was when I had kids, because I grew up like, we cannot waste food. I was poor enough where wasting food was a sin. And so you couldn't just like scrape it off into the garbage disposal and call it a day. You had to finish it. And when I had kids, all of a sudden they weren't finishing their plates. Well, who finished their plate then?
Yeah, I heard that from a good friend of mine, and that was a revelation for me. And he put on a tremendous amount of weight.
Yeah, that was my Waterloo. That was when I had to, and then that was when I had to wake up and say, enough is enough.
Well,
I need to modify my lifestyle.
Was it
because I can't fit through the door?
Do you think at that point you were certainly smart enough to recognize it, but do you think your subconscious was justifying it to you to save that food?
I kind of understood my process and why I was finishing 3 plates of macaroni and cheese at the end of the day. I understood that I was being driven by this waste not, want not mentality. We're happy Protestant background, right? Show
Yeah.
up early for stuff and don't waste anything. And so I was caught in that. Yeah, absolutely. And the solution ended up not being throwing the food away, because that was something I couldn't handle. The solution, I had to get a big dog to eat everything. No, I doubt it. When I was a kid, that was my strategy. But no, I just had to be more careful about how I served food to people. And since I was the chef, since I was the lead cook in the house, I still am. I just had to be more conscious of how I dialed stuff up when I was serving dinner. And once I got that under control and started modifying my own lifestyle, then I felt better about who I was. Now, what set off the alarm? Did I want to be cute? Did I feel like I'd have more friends if I was in shape? Did I want my jeans to fit my dad butt right? I'm not sure. I never broke that down. I think it was probably afraid of the truth. That it was simple vanity. But ultimately later on, I was like, well, no, I want to be healthy so that my longevity, regardless of how long I live, I want to be walking on the day I die. And I just realized, part of me realized that if I didn't start, if enough wasn't enough, if I kept down this path, I was going to start losing abilities.
Okay. Well, something that the dog part probably didn't bring up was people that are spending too much time with their pets.
I don't think any of us have ever found enough of that. As a matter of fact, if you wanted to sit around and talk pet benefits with these people, you'd have a show that would go like 18 hours. They just, anybody who has enough of a caring for their animal, for the dog, to take the dog to the dog park, which is it's for a human, it's an okay place, but for a dog, it's pretty cool, and it's a real gift to the dog. And so all of that group of people is incredibly biased. They're all dog lovers. And they love dogs enough to know dogs' nature. I mean, the conversations about why dogs behave a certain way are amazing. It's like PhD level.
Well, that's interesting. It's kind of, but at what cost? I mean, if
But
I
none of them are. But none of them are putting down the pipe. If that's
right,
what you're
well,
asking,
at what cost?
they haven't hit their limit yet.
Are you willing to throw out your significant other in favor of the pet? Well, I think that's there's a deeper issue there.
Yeah, indeed. And when we're talking about enough is enough, that's one of the aspects, right? Are my primary relationships suffering
Hmm.
from this thing that I'm considering in terms of it being enough?
Well,
And you have to be kind of fearless to do that, because that requires a degree of self-honesty.
I think one thing that we share in common, which we don't share a lot in common, is that we feel a tremendous amount of responsibility to those important relationships.
You have to honor stuff, and ultimately the stuff around you, the stuff closest to you, is the stuff where you should be putting your most love and energy, because it's affected most.
Yeah.
If I say I love the Los Angeles Dodgers, they don't get much from that, unless I go out and buy all their gear or something, and then my credit thing will be a whole other story. But that love, even though it's legit, I love the Dodgers. They're great. No, actually, I loved them back when it was Lopes and Say and Garvey and Reggie Jackson in the outfield, Russell. Those were my Dodgers. But that love is not as doesn't you don't get the ROI. You don't get the return on investment. And so ultimately, the people around you, the primary relationships, end up being part of your enough criteria, I think, at least for me.
Yeah, I think we exactly, because how much love do we have to give? I certainly love our country. I can't think of a sports team I love, but or a celebrity I love. Love is a. I encourage people to throw that word around, but don't throw it around loosely because that's too much.
No, because love implies some heavy lifting.
Hmm.
And unless you're on a 7,000 calorie a diet a
Yeah,
day,
yeah. Then you can lift
you
it.
do too much heavy lifting, you're gonna wear yourself out.
Uh,
Here's one that came up. Are you ready to go lascivious on us?
absolutely.
Sex.
Yeah.
How much is enough? And what are we willing to do it? And what kind of wormholes does that go down? That in the dog park, we're not afraid to talk about stuff like that because it's so diverse and it's so cross generational and that's actually one of the cool things about having that diverse community in the same spot is that you can kind of weigh stuff and get stuff out there and some people are really shy and that's a forbidden subject and they don't want to talk about it, really closeted about their sexuality. Other people are like, well, I gotta get me some, and so you're able to kind of go out there and compare and contrast. So this is one that's really highly individual,
Yes, absolutely.
you know, and again, just like hunger, it's a bio drive. It's something that individually at various points in your lifestyle, you've got hormonal energy driving the urge for sexual behavior,
Or
and
lack.
then you've got uh, porn on the internet. And then you've got, uh, I was talking the other day, I wrote a little thing on all the erectile dysfunction ads on the TV. I mean, seriously, it's like they're not even, TV isn't gearing ads just for me, right? So it's not even like they're trying to pick on me. But it's like it is such a thing right now that you wonder who out there is making this so popular. And what I was asking that we have a doctor in the dog park. I was saying, so I don't need this stuff, but what does it do? Because it must be really popular. I mean, and I was asking her kind of in a real physiological way. I was like, so what exactly happens? Like, is it like you're 19 again? Is it, um, and she was laughing about it and stuff, but it spoke to this whole cultural mindset that if you're not getting a lot and it's not fantastic, somehow you're inadequate. And that is from my experience is kind of the shadow opposite of who we are. Most people I know are fairly off of the sexual treadmill. And many people I know, there's a whole asexual community that struggles coming out and saying, hey, I'm not really interested in sex. As a matter of fact, I would stay away from it because it's too intimate, it's too abrasive, there are too many power connections, there are too many assumptions, and it's just too much for me. I'm not that interested.
Well, there's too many flavors of it as well. I mean, for different people and what excites them. And then certainly in men, as the testosterone levels drop as we get older,
Mine
physically.
haven't dropped, just
Oh
for the
yeah, yeah.
record.
Oh, I know. Well, you're so virile,
Minus,
but
minus, right?
well, and a lot of people, I think they reach out. Those dirty old men or those wolves. I think it's some sort of subconscious need to feel 19 again, and we're not going to feel 19 again. And I don't believe the pills will make us feel 19 again. But things evolve. I mean, that's one of our things that if you live long enough, it's going to evolve.
I had a wise person once tell me, for many men, their eyes never age. And so they're always visually attracted to the same basic age and type of woman that they were when they started becoming sexually attracted to women. And as you suggest, that could be totally problematic. I mean, this woman, when she was telling me this, her point to me was, grow up, son. It was like, at least recognize that tendency in your own life.
Well, for me, I was always attracted to women that were older, 7 or 8 years older, even when I was in high school or college. And I've stuck with that group even now that I'm in my 60s. And now some of them are great grandmothers. So,
Nice.
well, no, it was a matter of commonality, what we had in common.
You were hunting cougars, son. You were hunting cougars.
Well, we didn't have that term back then, but it was a
No.
commonality. It was a commonality. We had the same experiences, and that was important for me to be attracted to someone, and the idea of being forced to be in a relationship with somebody 40 years younger than I am is laughable. I mean, what would we
Even if they're
talk?
cute.
Yeah,
Even if they're
exactly.
cute.
What are we going to talk about?
Yeah. So you're like the Hey 19 song, right? By Steely Dan.
Yeah,
We got nothing in common.
exactly. So, it is different for different people, but
And we're talking within our own framework of normal heterosexual dude
yes,
stuff. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
unfortunately, this show is limited in terms of our scope here. I mean, I'm thinking of like, do you remember the sage, a singer comedian named Martin Mull?
Oh, absolutely. Don't wake up next to a
He had a
pig in a
song. He
blanket.
had a song called "Let's Get Normal," and I believe the quote in the song was, "I tried a poodle, a collie, Kukla, Fran, and Ollie, but Mary in the manger got me satisfied." And
Well,
and and that really speaks to the not only the fluidity but the vast spectrum of possibility. And so when you've got a culture that's pumping up sexuality, you're getting yours or you're not cool, and then you've got all of these possibilities, this endless catalog. That's a recipe for a lack of self-control. That's a recipe for that. This is exactly what we're having the show for, because you're the one who has to say when is enough enough. I mean, you may have to state your biological drive and say, "Sorry, Charlie, I don't need to be intimate with this person just because you think in your little biological reality that making babies with this person would be awesome." And rise above that.
oh, absolutely. And you don't have to follow every path, so to speak. Just because someone is attracted to you doesn't mean you have to take them up on that. And that includes men and women and goats, I guess. Martin Mull, one of his famous songs was "Why Don't We Get Drunk and Screw?" And that was a song of our generation. And that was a song of that time. Everybody's in the clubs, drinking, dancing, and it was just funny. We didn't live by it.
You thought 60s free love was awesome.
Yeah.
Toss on a couple of Jack Daniels and then go for it.
I used to laugh at the 60s generation that thought they invented sex. And, they had nothing on the 70s.
I think they tried to slide it out of the closet, and then the 70s just was rolling around in its own decadence.
Exactly. We were out of control and we knew it, and we had to survive it.
And so you know what they did? They first they threw herpes at us, then
Yes.
they threw AIDS, then they threw AIDS at us, and it's like if herpes wasn't bad enough, then now we're going to be totally buzzkill on sexual behavior with random people.
Oh, exactly. Herpes, it's going to maim you for life, kind of. And, oh, that didn't work. Now we'll kill you.
Yeah, we were making all sorts of jokes back, and herpes and his peas and their peas, and
Oh, yeah. Herpes simplex 94.
yeah, exactly.
And, but yeah, sex is an important one. But, everything we're talking about, Scott, there's people that are, I assume you can be chemically addicted to sex, those endorphins, right?
You can't, but there's an important and buying stuff too. Almost everything we've talked about has a reward center in the brain, and so part of eating potato chips, it's like that will hit a certain happy zone, And unless you're able to kind of step back and say, hey, I'm the boss of the happy zones too. They don't rule me, I rule them. And I'm okay without that rush. So you're absolutely right. Now there's a dirty secret though about chemical dependence. And the people who make money off of treating chemical dependence probably don't want you to know this. So look around and make sure they're not in the room. Take them out of the room right now, or they'll be judging you and judging me. The secret is this. Probably 90% of the people who end their chemical dependency problem do it by themselves. Absolutely. They wake up and think about your smoking cigarettes. Did you like get a doctor? Did you go to counseling? Did you get, if you had your alcohol thing, you mentioned it, you just dialed it back. And that is, in fact, the thing is that because those people don't end up in treatment, or because they don't stand out and tell their stories because they're not really focused as part of the recovery thing, that truth is kind of a quiet truth. But the reality is people wake up in the morning and say, you know what, I'm done. This is a mess, and I recognize it, and I'm going to just stop because this is not who I want to be. There are people who get support. There are people who struggle. So there's a place for the industry. But the reality is not everybody has to go through the industry to get to the right spot.
My chemical dependencies were not romantic. They were nicotine and they were aspartame. And
really, the blue stuff?
Aspartame, yeah, the artificial sweetener. You want to gain weight. You want to gain weight. Start putting aspartame in your body. But I was addicted to that, and I thought, no, it's a caffeine thing. I don't do well without caffeine, but I'm not addicted to it.
So you could get fat on old-fashioned Diet Coke?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yes,
absolutely.
I agree because I went through that same process.
But those were addictions, not romantic, and the nicotine had me pretty bad. It even sparks thoughts these days. But I went on the patch, and I was slow to come off the patch because the patch was the perfect form of nicotine.
It was low-key entertaining, wasn't it? And the gum was good. Just a piece between your cheek and your gum, and you're high as hell.
It's like then I had to get off the patch.
Couldn't chain smoke my way to the spot.
Yeah, exactly. So, we all have our Achilles heels, so to speak. And, I was blessed not to have the others. Sex may have been an issue, but I think that was a self-esteem thing for me when I was younger.
And hormonal.
Maybe more. But, I think things become habit forming. And I think that's probably one thing that did. It's what we did, going to the clubs, taking people home, enjoying those physical relationships, and I think it can just become habit forming now.
And there's a huge esteem issue with a lot of this stuff, right? The guy who gets the girl every night or goes home with a different girl from the club every night, the guy who can drink everybody else under the table. So there's a lot of again, it's part of our culture. We have a very competitive culture. More is better. More money, more wealth, more bigger house, more cars.
Well, if you don't believe that, get on social media and watch some TV, and they'll pound it into you.
Absolutely. And so that even brings up another one that we could talk about a little bit, and that is material possessions.
Right.
I'm digging myself out of a lifetime of acquiring not valuable stuff. Pretty much it's all junk. But I had a really big house. And so I never had to run into the reality that, you know what, how many books are too many? And now that I'm in a point in my life where I've read all the books and now I've got so many books that I've got like a big bookcase with two levels of paperbacks. So there's a whole wall of paperbacks behind the wall of paperbacks. You think I ever like browse those books and figure out which one I want to read? No, I'm too busy at the dog park, to be fair.
You gave up reading and intellectual stimulation to watch Spot poop.
I actually took up reading after I retired, and so I'm now plowing through books. But guess what? Even if I read, and this is what I'm doing, I read one new book, and I read one old favorite. So I do pull stuff off my shelves and read it. But I've got huge shelves of books, and every time I get a new one to read, I've got one more book for the shelf. So it's it doesn't really work in terms of minimizing the stock. And I thought, I'm just going to open a bookstore. I'm just going to open a used bookstore, and I'll get all this stuff up on. And I'm like, how many hours would it take me to catalog this thing? How many hours would it take me to curate it? And how many times getting $1.99 per book and then running to the post office to ship it to somebody? And I just started thinking of the logistics of that, and that, you know what? Mm-mm.
Well, I'm not inferring I have that problem, but I have a pair of high top tennis shoes that are over 50 years old, but they are leather Pro Ked high top shoes. And there's no wear to them whatsoever. They're still like brand new.
What size you wear?
Size 14.
Ooh. Yeah, no, those don't gift them to me. Okay. When you're relinquishing your possessions, when you're like, oh, well, I'm just gonna give everything away to everybody, size 14 ain't gonna work.
Okay. Well, then you don't have to worry.
11 would work. 11 wide and thick, because my feet are like Fred Flintstones. But you only have one pair of old classic shoes?
Oh no. For me to throw away shoes that fit is painful. So now the deal is I throw away 2 pair every time I get a new pair.
Oh, nice. You are so responsible. That is like, this is not your area of concern.
Well, no.
I've still got my 8th grade platform disco shoes.
Oh, cool.
And I kept them because I think a part of me realized that they were never going to make these like 3 or 4 inch platform shoes for guys ever. And I needed to take advantage of the fact that I had a pair.
Well, absolutely. I still have 3-inch heeled cowboy boots that I promise you I will never wear.
Yeah, exactly.
And I should probably get them somewhere, to a thrift store, where somebody that would be thrilled to find them could enjoy them.
Yeah, see, my problem is, after nearly 40 years in this house, I could be a thrift store.
Yeah.
Literally, people could come to my house and I could just put price tags on everything, and there would be so much stuff here that somebody who had a shopping addiction, somebody who enough is enough with shopping, would never leave.
Well, that's what they call an estate sale, Scott.
But there are other people who stack up bigger possessions. How many cars do you need? How many boats do you need? How many recreational vehicles do you need?
No, absolutely.
When is enough? Because they're going to come out with a really cool one this year. I promise you, it's going to be awesome.
Well, and there again, that's their passion. So, I don't think anybody from the dog park should judge their passion, because we're not ever going to judge the people at the dog park, who are really cool people.
Our cars are full of dog hair, though. Just be advised.
Well, I'm full of cat hair, but oh well.
Yeah. Get a little bit of that too.
Yeah. So it's an interesting topic. And how do we help people? We know that Nancy Reagan's just say no wasn't really valuable, but that's what.
And Imelda Marcos had a shoe problem. We know that too.
Well, absolutely. And but how do we help people? How do we?
Yeah. Okay. So I think some of it's come up in our conversation, and that's really what this is about. I think part of it is you have to kind of own the fact that nobody's gonna help you figure this out yourself. They're gonna, as a matter of fact, most of the time, people encourage you to go the wrong direction.
Yeah.
You know, here's more, because maybe if you're fat and happy, you'll leave them alone, and so they're like, yeah, have some more chips. you know so there's this, and it's in commercial society, as you suggest. Social media is never going to say, hey, put it down. People trying to sell things to you aren't never going to say, stop buying things. And food is delicious, so we keep going, and drugs are really rewarding, so we keep going. So ultimately, I think the first step is, no one is going to tell you enough is enough but you. And as we pointed out, you can't really look at somebody else and figure this out, because each of us has different weaknesses, different inclinations. They're not, I wouldn't call them weaknesses. We have inclinations towards things that we like, towards things that hit our pleasure buttons. Each of us has different tolerances. Some people can drink their whole life and put it down, and it's no big deal. Other people start drinking, and a week later they're, calling somebody up for Percocet. It's really difficult, and it's really individualized. So you are an individual. Nobody else is going to tell you enough is enough. And you've got all of these different aspects of your life that you can put this filter on and say, where am I at with this? Am I overindulging? Am I okay? Is this, I'm doing more than anybody else in this area. I consume kava, and I'm definitely doing more than most people in the Imperial Valley, because almost nobody drinks kava here. Not as much as some of the people I know who, have been drinking kava forever. But so I have to kind of measure it, right? If I would have a couple of shells, what we call it, of kava, and I would come home from the dog park and have a couple shells of kava and take a nap, and which wouldn't be so bad. Naps are good. I'm old.
Yeah.
But the house wouldn't get clean, and my chores wouldn't be done, and the bills wouldn't get paid, because that's kind of the administrative window of the day, and those would be problematic. And so for me, I wouldn't have this template where I could just look at somebody else and say, oh, look, I'm over the line. I would have to look at myself and say, you know what? I am suffering some impairments. So that would be the word I would write down and underline: impairment. Is my behavior impairing primary parts of my life? Is it hurting my job? Am I calling in sick because I watched too much football and drank too much beer? Is it impairing my relationships? Is my wife mad at me? Am I sleeping on the sofa because I just blew up the credit card and we don't have any money for a vacation? On cool stuff for off-roading, and it was really cool. And it was everybody's looking at me going, "Wow, you got some really cool stuff."
Yeah.
But now we don't have any money, and now we have a credit problem. That's an impairment. So is it impairing me financially? Is my love of this thing so good that I can't pay my other bills? So you look at all these various life aspects: relationship, job, financial, health. Health, is it, I think for us and nicotine, it was like, unless you were willing to adapt to the Woody Allen model, that why would I stop smoking? It's going to take 20 years off my life. It's the last 20 years. Who wanted those anyway? Unless you adopt that mind frame, at some point you start realizing that for all the aspects of nicotine that are awesome, I mean, I loved it intellectually. It sharpened me up like nothing else, man. I was a smart dude when I was smoking cigarettes. And when I quit, for about 6 months, I was like, oh. And it just, I had to kind of, my brain had to kind of rebuild itself without that nice little moderate stimulant that nicotine does. The grasshopper poison nicotine.
It was kind of the
You know,
it was kind of the rotary engine just going hum.
it really was. There's a reason it becomes a drug of choice.
For some.
Yeah, for some. I tease my Facebook coffee friends who put up like coffee memes every week or every day that say like coffee is the most wonderful thing in the world. I'm like, well, and I'll occasionally like say, I'm waiting for my friends who use meth to start posting their memes too, and they're like, well, it's not that bad. I said, no, but the way your relationship to it is similar.
Yeah, but Scott, we can't allow other people their vices and not allow those coffee drinkers their vices.
Well, and not only that. If I was a coffee drinker, and I'll have a cup now and again. I'm not a non-coffee drinker. I would say simply, my coffee habit is relatively non-impairing. It doesn't cost too much. It's not cost. My wife's not ready to divorce me because I'm drinking coffee. My job actually wants me to drink coffee because they get more stuff done. And I'm like, yeah, coffee is the slave of productivity. That's why they want you to drink coffee. That's why they have it in the office. And they want, and it doesn't cause any real long-term health benefits that they figured out. And with all of us drinking coffee, if there were long-term health benefits, they'd have figured it out.
They'd be dead. Well, you talk about impairments now. There's a lot of people that have trouble recognizing. They find themselves in that state, but they have trouble putting pieces together and recognizing what got them there.
Yeah, this is a big boy step, right? I mean, this is coming to terms with yourself because you realize that nobody else is going to figure this out. It's got to be you. Is difficult because we build all sorts of defenses. You know, if I hammer the coffee people on Facebook, they're like, but it's delicious.
Get over it, Scott.
It enhances my friendship. You know, so it's this whole kind of denial thing, right? And I'm like, yeah, but if you didn't have it, you turn into a monster. Isn't that important?
Well, you know.
With coffee, there is an impairment. What if you're not sleeping at night? Oh,
More coffee,
right? Yeah, right. I like the people who say, "Well, coffee puts me to sleep." I drink a little bit of coffee and I just go right to sleep. It's like nothing. It's like because you're drinking like 3 gallons a day. Your body's giving up.
Scott, you're being very biased here. There's people that drink coffee that get that same thrill that you got out of nicotine.
Well, and it's fun to grab coffee because it's an innocuous. It's a fairly low key. You know, it's like there are a bunch of things on top of coffee on the list of priorities of enough is enough.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why it's good to grab it because you're like, oh, that's right. Well, you know, I am pounding a lot of coffee, and
well,
you know, and I've got indigestion, or I've got irritable bowel syndrome.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there's a health related impairment.
Now, this impairment theory, it made me think that if I had found myself being invited to a room that was an encounter group, I would not handle that very well, and I would not stay, and I would not care. But
what if they served coffee?
No, it wouldn't matter. The coffee couldn't be good enough to have others sit in judgment of me, but we need to have our own encounter groups with ourselves.
I would say that that's much more likely to happen than an encounter group with a bunch of, like a support group of a lot of other people who are going through the same thing. It is really, well, if everybody's got the same impairment or everybody's got the same issue that they're working on and they're impaired in different ways, it can be really breakthrough to sit around in a room full of people and go, and hear somebody tell a story, and you're not judging them. You're like, oh, that's me. I hadn't really thought about that.
Hi, my
So
name is.
I'm on my fifth wife, and they all leave me because of drink. Oh, I see that connection.
Hi,
So
my
there
name.
can be some insight. There can
Hi,
be some insight from the group process for sure.
hi, my name is Scott, and I spend way too much time at the dog park. Hello, Scott. It's all
I
real.
do, but I'm picking up all the poop, so the dog park's clean. So there's
Yeah.
a positive social benefit there.
Well, there's a benefit for you, and that's a good thing. And
Well, and I come home at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I've got 6,000 steps. So
there you go.
that's not so bad.
Alrighty. Well, Scott, I think we better put this one in the book. I think this was an interesting effort to try.
And honestly, if listeners want to drop into the comment section and say where they found something here, like I hadn't thought about this, but now I am, and this is interesting. That would be helpful to me because it turns into the comment section turns into an encounter group in a way. And lots of times, as you suggest, lots of times we have blind spots.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's nothing like a kind-hearted person who says, well, yeah, I was going to the dog park for a couple of hours every day, and I got fleas.
Yeah.
And that could be my, and why have I been scratching so much? That could be my moment of insight. And then I would cut back a little bit, or at least take a bath once in a while.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good place to leave it. Everything from sex addiction to nicotine to kava to
The fleas in the
exercise.
dog park, we've covered it.
Oh yeah, exactly. This is an all-encompassing. This is a miraculous video. So,
But I
Scott.
think that's why it came up. Not to like keep riding into this, but because it is so expansive.
Yes.
Because there are so many different areas in which enough could be too much, and that it really requires us to kind of sit and pause and weigh it. So appreciate you providing that platform, because somebody learned something today about themselves, I guarantee you.
Well, we learned, and I certainly learned something from you, and I know it goes without saying that you learned something from me, so that's a good thing. All right,
Yeah, for sure.
everybody. This has been Justin Case and Scott bringing you American Consciousness. Thanks for joining us. Remember, additional information and links are provided in this video's read more. Today is the day to subscribe to this channel. Please learn more about Scott when time permits.